Today we're going to talk, like Mike said, about adjusting to the online environment. So this is going to include some scheduling and organization tips. So when I think about adjusting to an online environment, I think of two really big things: time management and organization. And those go into feeling confident in online classes. So the big question that we're running into is, how can we stay motivated, right? So how do we make time management effective? And there are a couple of steps that go into that. We're going to talk about identifying your priorities, making your schedule visible, creating an action plan, getting organized, communicating with others, and then remembering to breathe. So with that, let's get started on actually identifying priorities. So what goes into your schedule, right? This is a question that I ask folks all the time. And some priorities that you probably have right now are classes, study time, meals, work, sleep, breaks. And generally when I ask students, they can identify the first couple, but they tend to forget sleep and breaks. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the importance of incorporating those things into your schedule. So we have our priorities. Now we actually want to build that schedule. So you want to remember to start with things that have set times that you can't change. So those are nice places to start because it's really concrete and you know that, like, no matter what, those are going to go there. So class and work are really good examples of those things. And then I encourage folks to start adding in some study times for themselves. So trying to keep these between an hour and an hour and a half is ideal so that you don't get burnt out. And then what's really important is to not forget meals, breaks, and other activities. So some fun in your schedule, incorporating times when you want to relax a little bit. Those are all really critical for your schedule. And what's important about doing this now is that we're really used to having structure being on campus, right? You have a classroom to go to, but right now we don't have that same structure, so we kind of have to build it for ourselves. So let's talk about how to actually do that. So what I have here is an example schedule for a week, and this first schedule is going to be like pie in the sky, every moment is detailed. But we're going to talk about some different options. So the first thing I'm going to do is include my classes, right? Those are happening consistently. Then I'm going to add in my work schedule because that's pretty consistent throughout the week. And now I'm going to add in some homework and study time. And it's important to notice that these blocks are just an hour long, and there's a lot of them. You may not have this many in your schedule, and that's fine. But plugging in some specific time to work on your homework and to study is really important to help you stay on top of all of that material. Now, here's a really big one. Don't forget sleep. So set a bedtime for yourself. Listen, I am 25 years old and I have to set a bedtime for myself just to stay consistent, especially now when time kind of feels funky when we're all socially isolated. Having some consistency in your sleep schedule is really important for your mental health, for your physical health, for everything. So don't forget to do that for yourself. Find time to eat. So I'm not going to tell you when or how or what to eat, but you should find some time to eat so that you have energy to get everything else done that you need to do. Sometimes those times might fall into something that doesn't change, right? So maybe you're home with your family, or with some roommates that have a really consistent schedule and you all eat together. So plugging that in for yourself is really important to get a view of your day. And then breaks. So breaks are very, very important. They help to make sure that we don't feel burnt out when we're working through a lot of stuff. They're a nice way to give your brain some time to chill. Everything about breaks is critical, and make sure to put in quite a few of them. So this one has a few that would mostly pertain to if we were still on campus, like the rec center and stuff. But scheduling in time for like a friend night that I have on that Saturday, that's really critical to stay connected with folks that you aren't seeing as much as you used to. So put in those breaks for yourself and you'll feel a lot better. What I've noticed for myself currently is that I have to take more breaks than normal. And that's really, really common right now. So we're dealing with a lot of stress. So granting yourself some grace and including maybe more breaks than you normally would is okay. To kind of prevent yourself from taking a break for too long, set a time limit to them. So I have definitely fallen into the trap of taking a break that I thought was only going to be 20 minutes and it ended up being an hour and a half. So in order to help myself kind of stay on task, I set a time limit for that and I set an alarm. It might seem really formal, but it can help in the long run. So planning for every hour of the day can be overwhelming. I know that personally, I don't like to have every single minute scheduled out. So it's important to include as much detail as you need. So here's another example of a schedule where I only included the classes, 2 of my meals, and a couple of study times. And this is a really great place to start if you haven't made a formal schedule for yourself. So rather than throwing in like 15 hours of studying over 5 days, try just putting in a couple of blocks that you want to aim for. And if that works really well for a week, try adding in some more the next week. Slowly developing those habits is way more important than trying to change everything all at once. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, schedule building online is all about making structure for yourself. So online courses are great if you like a lot of freedom, but right now, some of us might be taking online courses that don't normally like taking online courses. So we need to build that structure for ourselves, and building that structure can really help with the motivation that you might be struggling to find. And it can help you keep on top of all of the work that keeps coming up. So one important thing to remember when building an online schedule is to be specific. So say exactly what you plan on doing during the time that you block it out. So we're going to walk through an example of an online schedule. So just like before, I'm going to start with classes that have a set time. So some of your courses may have shifted to required Zoom lectures. Put those in first. They're going to be consistent. You know that you have to go for them. Plug them in. So I have Zoom lectures for biology, ISEM, and math in this theoretical schedule. And I titled what each one is so that I remember where I'm going, what link I need, what BB Learn page I need to be on at that time. Now I'm going to schedule time to view lectures or slides for classes that don't have normal meeting times. So maybe you have some professors that uploaded all of their slides to their BB Learn page or are posting recordings of their lectures for you to view at any time. Schedule some time out in your week to do that earlier than the day before assignments are due. So I noticed for myself when I took online classes, I would wait until the last possible moment to start going through all of that material, and it was always really stressful. So it's really important to schedule it earlier on in the week so stuff doesn't pile up on you. Now, just like before, I'm plugging in some homework and study time, and again, those are no longer than an hour and a half in this schedule. And you can see that I put quite a bit of flexibility in those, and that's another critical thing. So leaving a lot of space allows for events that might pop up, right? Maybe you suddenly have to provide childcare for your family, or you get called into work, or your parents need some help at home, or a friend really needs your help, or life happens. So incorporating that schedule early on can help reduce stress later when things come up. So let's look at Monday. Maybe that block of time that I had scheduled from 10 to 11 to do homework and studying gets filled up with something else, like a lecture went long, or I needed to talk to my professor afterwards and now I don't have time. Well, luckily, I left a ton of space in my schedule to plug that in somewhere else. So allowing those gaps to be filled with whatever you need is really nice and stress relieving for yourself. So a couple other tips for online scheduling. Schedule time to check your email. So I've talked with a lot of students who have said that they're getting tons of emails now because it's the main way for instructors to communicate with people about expectations for the course, to send reminders on homework or tests. which is great because you have a written record of what you need to do, but you may have gone from getting 10 emails a day to 30 emails a day, and that can be really overwhelming. So make sure you plug in some time in your schedule to actually go through those. If you're someone who only checked your email once a day beforehand, it would be a good idea to schedule in multiple times. Maybe one in the morning, one right after lunch, and then one at like 4:30 before you're done for the day. Another tip is to make a master list of your dates and deadlines for each week. So on Sunday night, go through and see what's coming up, what's going to be due, and then utilize your phone and computer for reminders. So setting a reminder for the day that it's due, but also 1 to 2 days beforehand, can help you stay on top of those assignments and help you not forget any that are coming up. So being really mindful about making lists and keeping track of when things are due is a really great way to help yourself. And then try breaking down that weekly to-do list into smaller daily lists. So I know for me, if I write a list on Sunday of everything that I need to get done within that week, it's really overwhelming. That list might be like 20 items long. But if I can take a second and just say, okay, what 4 items can I get done on Monday? That suddenly becomes a lot more doable and a lot less stressful for myself. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by giant to-do lists, break them down into smaller chunks. And then utilize your online resources. So instead of just putting in a block of homework and study time, try filling that with an SI Pass session or a drop-in tutoring session. So both of those things are still available to students. They're happening online and they're happening really well. All of our tutors and SI Pass leaders are set up to help you, and they can still provide all of those resources. And this can help give you some motivation to study. It feels good to connect with people in your class again, so try checking some of those out. The Writing Center is also available to help over Zoom or asynchronously, so you can schedule an appointment with them online and select whether you want to meet over Zoom or the phone with a tutor, or if you'd like to send in your assignment and get feedback on it later. The library has a chat function so you can still get support for your research needs. And if you have questions about jobs and internships during this time, check out Career Services. They're working really hard to make sure that they can still support students. So I know I've chatted with lots of folks who are concerned not so much about their courses, but about their internships that they had beforehand and now they aren't sure about. Try checking in with Career Services for advice on that. So you want to make sure, now that you've talked about scheduling and you have an idea of how to do it, to actually make that schedule visible. And it's important to find whatever method works best for you. So for me, I like to post it on the wall next to my computer because I know that I'll see it. But if maybe it works better to have it on your phone or on some other organizational app, try that. But the big point is that actually recording and making things visible can help motivate you to actually do them. So it's a way to hold yourself accountable to something. Our brains and ourselves are much better at doing tasks when we see that we wrote it down somewhere. We feel more obligated to do it. So that's really important for this. So one way to kind of hold yourself accountable, but also deal with that overwhelming feeling, is to create an action plan. So an action plan is a way of taking a large task and breaking it up into smaller, more manageable pieces. You can action plan big projects, homework assignments, study sessions, really anything. I action plan my weekends sometimes because that's who I am. And when you're making your action plan, it's important to include intermediate deadlines. So these deadlines can help prevent procrastination. So I'm going to go through a couple different types of action plans so you can get a feel for what those look like. And after this is done, I'll be sending an action plan template to Mike to send out to all of you. So hopefully that'll be a good resource. So let's develop an action plan for our study plan. So maybe I wanted to study chapter 6 of biology by this Sunday. So this is kind of a back in time one. But the plan that I made for myself is that I'm going to skim the chapter in the textbook by the 17th. And then I'm going to attend Zoom lectures on the 20th, 22nd, and 24th, and I'm going to take detailed notes. And then I'm going to write down all important terms and concepts on one page on the 21st, And I'm going to try out some practice problems on the 23rd, and then I'm going to write 2 to 3 sentence summaries for each section of notes by the 24th. So there are a couple of things that I want you to notice in this action plan. One is it includes reminders for when you have class, so that's nice. 2, it sets small steps on how to study. And 3, it actually gives you some tangible things to do during that time that you had blocked out for homework and studying. So maybe you're sitting down on the 21st and you're like, oh man, I don't know what to study during this hour that I had blocked out. Well, you can go back and look at your action plan and say, oh right, I was going to write down all of the important terms and concepts. I'm going to condense that to one page. So it gives you something to do. So let's talk about action planning a paper, right? Maybe this is due on the 28th. So you're going to break it up by finding 3 sources by one day, developing your thesis statement another, writing an extended outline, having word count limits, submitting a rough draft to the writing center, giving yourself some time to edit, and then submitting your paper. So a couple things to notice here is that those word count limits are tangible and small. So the important thing to remember in an action plan is that no step is too small. And if you look at this and you say like, I don't think I can hold myself to writing 1,000 words in one day, that's okay. Break it down, write 500 words, write 200 words, write 1 sentence. Setting that goal that's achievable for you that you know you can accomplish is really important. You can always push it just a little bit. Maybe you know that you can write a sentence, put it to 2 sentences, right? So giving yourself something that you can do and that has a deadline is important for these things. One of the other important bits on this action plan for writing a paper is that I included submitting a rough draft to the writing center. So that goes back to utilizing those resources. Making sure that you're still able to access help is really important, and the writing center is there for you. So try doing that. Okay, so my final type of action plan is the one that I use all the time. So I action plan my day a lot. So this is an action plan for your day for Friday, right? So what I did first is I'm going to check my email and respond, and I'm going to set out an hour of time for that. So that's really important for me to stay up to date on everything, right? And then I'm going to attend my Zoom lecture for econ at 9:30. Now, that's something that occurs every week, but I'm still writing it down to remind myself to go and to give myself the motivation to be there. Then I'm going to summarize my notes after that lecture. And I've scheduled a half hour there, and then I'm going to take a break. So remember, breaks are important. And then after that break, I'm going to take notes on slides and the recorded lecture for Flen, which will start at 1 p.m. And I didn't put a deadline for how long that will take because let's say every week it takes me a different amount of time. But I know that afterwards I'm going to take a short break, and then I'm going to work on homework from 3 to 5 p.m. And during that time, I'm going to break it up a little bit. So let's talk about how to break up that time. So the Pomodoro Technique is one of coaching's favorite tips. And I like to think of it as time management for the small scale. So it's a way to organize how you're actually working. And what you want to do is understand what task you have and then break it into chunks, which are called Pomodoros. So the general way that it works is for every 25 minutes of intense focus, you give yourself a 5-minute break. And after 4 of those back and forth, you give yourself a longer break. So it's a way to take a big chunk of time that maybe you set aside for studying and break it up into something that's easier and can maintain motivation, right? So when I sit down and I tell myself, you're going to work on a paper for the next 2.5 hours, I dread it. But telling myself, okay, Kelly, you only need to work on this paper for the next 25 minutes is a lot easier for me to handle. And if 25 minutes is too long, that's okay. Break it down. Do 15 minutes followed by a 3-minute break. Whatever amount of time that it works for you to be successful in is the important bit. And it automatically incorporates these breaks that I talked about being so important. Now, if you get on a roll and you're working for 25 minutes and your timer goes off and it's technically time to give yourself a break, but you're feeling really good about kind of the study groove that you're in, it's okay to keep going. Just make sure to give yourself a break at some point so that you aren't feeling burnt out later. So we've talked about how to build that schedule, right? So that first piece of feeling confident in your classes and finding motivation is that time management. Now we're going to talk about the other bit, which is actually organizing your space. So you want to find a place to work, and we're going to talk about how to actually set up that space. So having a dedicated space for working on school can help add some consistency to your day-to-day online schedule. I know that one of the hardest parts for me from working from home is that I don't have an office really, right? So how do I set up a space for myself that I can be productive in that's separate from my couch, where I try and relax? So my biggest recommendation is try to avoid working on your bed when possible, but I also understand that that's not possible for everyone. Maybe you're staying with family and you don't have a desk somewhere to work on, or everyone else is working on the kitchen table. So if you have to work on your bed, try working at the end of your bed that you don't normally sleep on. So rather than sitting where your pillows are, sit on the end of it, just to give yourself some sort of separation between where you're sleeping and where you're working. And then keep things like notebooks, writing utensils, headphones, charging cords, everything that you might need, keep that nearby. Also try and minimize distractions when you're working through your lecture materials or anything else like that. Treat it like you were in class. Now, if you're in a space where you can't just have quiet, use your headphones or background music to block out some noise distractions. And then communicate with your family or roommates about times when you need a quieter environment to work. So maybe you have to take an online test and you can't have headphones and you really do need that quiet space. Make sure to communicate that need with the people that you're living with. So part of getting organized also involves organizing your files. So you want to create a workspace that is both physically and digitally efficient. So establish an organization system that's clear and consistent with file names, and arrange your files and papers in a way that makes sense. So this is really critical right now because we've shifted from turning in assignments and tests in person to now doing it all online. So making sure that you can always find the assignment that you need and that it has a really clear file name for yourself and your instructor is really important. So here's an example of it, right? Maybe you're taking English 101. You can make a folder for each class. And then within that class, you have the different types of assignments you might turn in. And then within that folder, you might have rough drafts and final drafts. And then you're going to have your file name. So one important thing to notice here is that the file name is really clear, right? It's Christensen Essay 1. And that's useful for myself, so I don't get mixed up on what file I'm trying to turn in for an assignment. But it's also very professional and clear for my instructor. So when they get that file, they have no doubt who it was from and what it is. So taking a little bit of time to organize files well can really help you find things more quickly in the future. So we've talked about time management and we've talked about organization. So there's one other critical piece about working from home or working somewhere other than on campus, and that's working with others, which can be really difficult. So I don't have all the answers to how to work and schedule in a challenging living situation, but I do have a couple of suggestions. So first and foremost, be open and explain your situation and needs to your friends and family. One way to do this is to share your schedule with the people you're living with. So I've heard from some students that their parents don't understand the amount of work that they actually have to put in to be successful in their courses. So one way to help share this with people is to break it down. Say, okay, I have to attend these lectures and that's going to take 4 hours of my time each week. Then I need to dedicate, 8 hours of studying for this exam that I have. And I have an assignment that'll take me at least 2 hours to complete. And I have a paper that I need to submit and I need to attend this tutoring session. So really showing people just exactly what goes into your day and what goes into how much work it is to be a student is one way to show them your needs. So this can really help understand the amount of work and pressure that you're under to accomplish each week. And then develop a schedule with people that you're with for things like internet usage and quiet hours. So this isn't going to be possible all the time. But if you are running into issues with like connectivity, so maybe you really need a strong internet connection for a required meeting with an instructor, share that need with your family or your friends or whoever it is that you're with in order to let them know that that's coming up, as well as discussing when you need some quiet time to take a test or to write a paper. People can be most helpful when they know what you need. So try and share those things. If there's some more sort of bigger struggles that are occurring with the living situation that you're in, I highly recommend reaching out to the Counseling and Testing Center. They have folks that can help you navigate those situations because sometimes it is beyond this. So communicating your needs also means communicating with your instructors often. So emailing, calling, having Zoom sessions whenever you have questions is really critical. And letting your instructors know if you have any trouble with internet accessibility is also critical. So I've had some students in my own course who can't attend Zoom sessions. So we've worked around different ways to do that, some different solutions. If you're having any struggles with your instructor providing those different options for you, then I recommend reaching out to the Dean of Students office. They can help advocate for you to make sure that you're getting what you need to still be successful. And then also reach out to your friends, from a distance. Having study sessions online with friends that you would normally study with is a good way to get connected and get some help. But also just finding times to decompress with folks that you enjoy is important. So group messages, FaceTime, online games, those are all really good options to stay connected with your people. And on that, you want to keep in contact with your advisor. So I have some important information from University Advising about the pass-fail grading option that is up. So I know that lots of people have had lots of questions, and hopefully Kristen can help us during our Q&A portion to answer some of those, but some general information or the top 5 things to know. So one is that the deadline to opt into pass-fail and traditional grading is Friday, May 1st, 2020. Keep that deadline in mind. If you're curious about this, if you think you have a class that you want to change to pass-fail, that is your deadline to do it. Another important thing, a grade of pass will satisfy course minimum grade prerequisites. So a pass in Math 143 would allow you to enroll in Math 160. So that's important to keep in mind. A grade of pass does not affect your GPA, but a grade of fail does. So be cautious because this will place additional weight on your graded courses and could unintentionally lead to a lower GPA. This is a big concern if you're on probation or have your financial aid reinstated. So really keep those GPA questions in mind. Exercise additional caution before switching to pass-fail if you're interested in graduate school, pre-health, law school, transferring, any of those things. So some institutions might not accept a pass-fail. Some maybe will, but there isn't any guarantee, like there isn't any universal answer on this. So it's really important to take that into consideration and to look into those different areas. And then think through areas of your life that might be affected. So if you're in a really specific program like education, having a pass-fail, or like any sort of dip in your GPA might have really serious ramifications for your continuation into that program. So make sure you're getting approval from those programs before changing to a pass-fail grading system. So some other things like what to keep in mind if you're thinking about switching to pass-fail. One is determine what you hope to achieve by switching to a pass-fail, right? So you want to make sure that you have a really good reason to switch to that. Talk to your instructor beforehand so that you have a really firm understanding of what they define as a pass or a fail. So I know for our course, we've gone through and developed criteria of like what it means to pass. And hopefully other instructors have done that as well, but get that firm understanding of what passing looks like, get it in writing, just so you know for yourself. Figure out who else you need to talk to in order to find out how a pass-fail grading might affect you. So this includes your advisor, department chairs, program heads, any sort of thing that you're involved in, you'll want to know. And then you want to kind of weigh that positive versus negative, so doing a pros cons list for yourself. And if you've determined that switching to pass-fail is right for you, then you want to follow the registrar's instructions on how to do so by May 1st. And throughout this whole process, it's really important to contact your advisor to keep in the loop with them to learn more about that. And they're going to have the best advice because everybody's situation is very different. And it is a really person-to-person choice. Okay, so the final thing I just want to talk about is how do we handle interruptions, right? So we had a really big one. We all switched to online, and that's really difficult. So some things to keep in mind and some reasons why it's really important to have a flexible time management strategy is one, priorities change, right? So maybe when you were on campus, your biggest priority was passing your classes, doing really well, and having a good time. But now you're home, and maybe your priority is to help your family out more. Maybe you need to work more. Maybe you need to provide some sort of childcare for people. Keep that in mind that these priorities shift, and that's okay. Remember that life happens, right? This is a perfect example of that. Keep in mind that things don't always go according to plan. So maybe you have the most perfect schedule where every minute is blocked out, but then an emergency comes up. You know, grant yourself some grace and some flexibility to change that plan a little bit. Keep in mind that you might have extra time or less time. So maybe an assignment that you thought was going to take 4 hours only took 2. What do you want to do with that extra time? Maybe it'd be best for you to give yourself a break, or maybe it'd be good to start looking ahead at what other projects you could maybe finish a little sooner to relieve some stress for future you. But maybe you have less time. Maybe a 2-hour project took 4 hours. Where can you shift things around in your schedule in order to still stay on track? And remember that other people might need your help. So especially right now, you might have requests for help from lots of other folks in your life, and that's okay. So keep that in mind, and just be sure to communicate changing needs with the people that are applicable, right? So reaching out to instructors to let them know that an emergency popped up. Asking for extra time on an assignment is totally fine. And if there's a really big life change, get in touch with the Dean of Students, either on your own, through your advisor, through an academic coach, through someone you trust. They can help you navigate that situation as well. They're really great at providing support for students. And then the most important thing to remember is to breathe. So if things are feeling really overwhelming or stressful, take a 5-minute break. Give yourself some time to just sort of breathe, decompress, before you jump back into whatever it is that you need to get done. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. So we'll kind of shift into the Q&A portion and just kind of open it up for questions from everyone. So thank you all. And I guess, do we have any questions for academic coaching, for Michael, for Kristen on the advising side? We are here to help. Hey. Q&A, nothing.
If any of you do find that you have questions after this presentation, how can people reach out to you, all 3 of you, to ask you those questions? And we do have our first question, actually. Yay. What do you guys recommend for dealing with anxiety and depressive mood swings during this epidemic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a couple of different resources available through campus. Vandal Health Ed has provided some really amazing content that they've posted on their social media as well as on their website for sort of general tips. If it's a really severe concern, Counseling and Testing Center is still available to students. So they're able to see, new students who have never gone in before or students who have in the past. They can do Zoom counseling. There is a 24-hour crisis line that is available. Some other sources that can help are places like the Women's Center. They do provide a lot of support to students as well. Mark, do you have or Kristen, do you have other recommendations? No?
I mean, I think that's a really specific question for every person to ask themselves. For me, what I would recommend is, in addition to accessing what resources are available, to, if possible, try and really make those scheduled times for you really intentional. So is there Is there a hobby that you can do that's relatively low setup, something that feels really manageable and quick to do? Maybe journaling is an option. Is there a specific type of music that sort of brings you down? I think really identifying what are those things that can start to kind of taper that a little bit until you reach out to an additional source, if that's something you decide to do.
And I think reaching out to friends is still just as important. So I know for me, it's rough to like send a text message when I'd much prefer to see someone in person, but still reaching out in that way is really critical. And I know that, you know, you have a lot of people in your community in fraternity and sorority life. You have a lot of people there sort of built in, which is awesome. So if there is a concern, you know, reach out to your fellow chapter members. If there's someone that you really trust, that's a really great way, because part of it is just showing that like you're not alone in this, and that there are people here who care for you and who want to make sure that you're getting the support and the help that you need. And if you have any questions, like how do you get connected with CTC, you can search Counseling and Testing Center. Mark and I also refer people there all the time for coaching. I went there as a student often, so I know that they're really great. But if you want to get in contact and to kind of answer Michael's question of how to connect with us, there is the ACAD, so it's ACAD coaching at UIdaho. I'll include that in an email, .edu. And that's one way that you can connect with a coach to schedule an appointment. You can also do so over Vandalstar, which is also how you can connect with your advisor. And then Kristen, what's the best email for folks if they have a general advising question and they're not sure who to ask?
Yeah, the best email would be advising@uidaho.edu.
Awesome. And I can compile kind of a list of those emails and send it to Michael to send out to everybody as well.
Yeah. Are there any other questions from any of the attendees? Okay, seeing none, I just have a quick note for all of, oh, we do have one more. Recommendations for having a more stable system for having the members in a fraternity to use a schedule more often.
Okay, so are you asking, I guess my question is it more of like a shared chapter? Is there any insight on if school is going to be online next semester? Okay. So I guess we'll tackle the first question on scheduling a more stable system to schedule more often. So there are some apps out there that you can use, like we used MeisterTask briefly. Having a Slack, which I know the University of Idaho uses for sort of like your whole house to stay connected, is one way that you can do it. One really simple way is just creating like a house calendar or a chapter calendar if you need that sort of information for everyone to see, and sharing that out with everyone is one way to do it. You know, if you'd like to have one specific type of calendar that people all use, you can definitely try that. However, everyone's scheduling personality is different. So holding everyone to one standard is not always the best idea, but getting the information out to everybody is sort of more effective. So I guess long answer short is try a Google Calendar to share with your entire chapter for information that pertains to everybody. And then just encourage folks to use whatever method works best for them, for themselves. I'll share a couple of calendars that coaching likes to use. I'll send those out to folks. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
And one thing I could recommend is setting up study groups. And so having, you know, the engineers in the engineers, even though we have, you know, maybe some mechanical and some chemical, having them, they're all going to have rigorous schedules. So having them come together for a study group, you know, 3 times a week at a set time, and then having all of your, maybe you have a large number of political science, history, and philosophy students, have those stick together and study together and try to build group habits of like a set study time each week. And that way you can know at least that part of the schedule will be consistent.
And there is a way, let's say you wanted to continue some sort of study table option for folks. There is a way to make a giant Zoom meeting for your whole chapter and then create breakout rooms for people in specific subjects. So that might be one way, especially if you need to maintain some sort of attendance record in order to do that, to maybe give some clear instruction to the entire group and then send them into those different areas like Mike recommended.
Is there any insight on if school is going to be online next semester?
There was actually an email sent out by the president at the end of the day today saying that all indications at this point are that we will return to live delivery of classes in full campus and statewide operations Monday, August 24th, 2020.
And what is an appropriate way to confront a teacher about an unfair online grade?
That's a really good one. One thing that I think is important is to formulate your answer in a way that's really professional. So it helps you make your case in point if you construct like a formal email to this instructor about that, and having that assignment like pulled up and showing exactly where you think the grading was unfair or why you think you deserve a certain grade would always be like my first step. It could have been some misunderstanding, or maybe they just didn't dive into it as well as they should have. That can happen. If you aren't getting a good response from an instructor, either they aren't communicating with you or they brush you off or anything like that, keep all of that communication that you have had. So for lack of a better term, sort of form a paper trail of those communications with an instructor, and then get that information to someone who has a little bit more power in the situation. So whether that's your advisor, a department chair, an associate dean, or the dean of students, all of those people are there to help you. I tend to say, when in doubt, go to dean of students. They know exactly how to handle those situations. That would be my advice. Mark, what would you say?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, because one of the things, and thank you, Kelly, that was a really good response. I think one of the things that this highlights is that the way in which we communicate in person is also very different than the way in which we communicate digitally or through an email. So I think in regards to if there was an email being sent, making sure to really be very clear in the email and as professional as possible, and understand that a lot of our communication is nonverbal, like the tone of our voice, or maybe certain other gestures, like sort of physical gestures that we would be doing. So I think in addition to everything Kelly is saying, just really making sure that that email communication or that digital communication is really as clear and as professional as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on that a little bit, I always recommend for something like this, having someone that you trust read over the email first before you send it. Sometimes they can kind of help see the tone in a different way than maybe I see it when I'm writing it, or you might see it when you're writing it. And sometimes that can help to frame your email in a way that's going to be more likely to be received by the person that you're trying to kind of win over to your position. And then also I would definitely say, particularly if it's an instructor who's kind of within your degree program, I'd just kind of like to reiterate what Kelly said. Your advisor is a good place to start in those situations, especially because very often they'll have relationships with the instructors in their programs, and so they might be able to kind of help smooth the way for you as well.
Yeah. And I think if there's anything specific, like if there was a grading rubric and you feel like you really hit every point, showing that to your instructor by saying, like, when you said you wanted me to discuss this point, I did it here. When you said this, I did it here. Sometimes it involves a little bit more work on your end, but it makes a really clear argument to your instructor. And sort of reiterating what everyone said, if you need any help, like getting those emails together, asking your advisor or an academic coach is a great place. I know both Mark and I have helped many a person craft an email. We help each other craft emails all the time. So, we're more than happy to help you out with that as well. Any other questions?
Okay. We'll wait just a minute longer if there are any questions. And while we wait, to any IFC members in the webinar at the moment, I just needed to remind you to shoot me an email, shoot me a message. You might be able to message me in here with attendee powers, and just give me your name and your chapter so that I can list that you are here to help satisfy some academic requirements. So, okay. And I'm still not seeing any questions. Okay, I think we can go ahead and wrap up then. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kelly, Mark, and Kristen for being here to answer questions and just generally support the students. If they have any questions, if the attendees have any questions, please feel free to reach out at any time, and they would be more than happy to assist you.
Yeah.
All right.
And we'll
Any
send
closing thoughts?
Yeah, I was just gonna say we'll send some info along. So some templates on how to action plan, contact information, I'll send that over, and that'll go out to all of you. If you do have any requests to maybe meet, like in a smaller group over Zoom, we're more than happy to do that as well. I just want to thank Mark and Kristen for being here to help with all of the questions. Thank you all so much. Yeah, any other thoughts from you?
Thank you so much for having us. And yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to work with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Have a lovely evening, everybody.
All right, that's it. Have a good night.
Bye.